when I started this podcast last May, I didn't really know how long it'd all be shuttered in place. Perhaps a few more months? Maybe through August, maybe through September, October? We didn't really know. I mean, for all of us, it's been a strange time. But for musicians, man, I can't even comprehend it. A lot of the first artists I talked to last year for this show were in a state of suspended animation. Their 2020 tour plans were either cut short, postponed, or canceled entirely. No one really knew how long they'd be off the road. The only certainty was that their economic lifeline, touring, was suddenly gone, and those boxes of albums and merchandise were collecting dust. Now, here we are, about a year into this damn thing. Musicians are adjusting, but it's still a tough slog. There is a bright spot ahead, but it just seems to be a bit further away every time we inch a little closer to it. And for my next guest, Knoxville, Tennessee-based singer-songwriter Mick Harrison, the pandemic has hit close to home. A few members of his band, The High Score, came down with the virus. Now, they survived, but the lack of touring and clarity and, everything else that's coming along with this damn thing is just wearing thin. Despite these uncertain times, though, Mick and his band in November 2020 released a new album called Bright Spot. While these songs predated the pandemic, including one by more than 20 years, the final work on the album was impacted by the times. As you'll hear, Mick hasn't seen many of his bandmates in person in months, even as the album was in the last stages of mixing and production. Now, before we get to Bright Spot, here's some background about Mick Harrison. Astute listeners of this podcast are familiar with Scott Miller, my first guest and current record holder for 4 songs appearances. Well, Scott and Mick formed the nucleus of the influential mid-90s alternative country band, the V-Roys. Based out of Knoxville, the V-Roys were so good that they grabbed the ear of Steve Earle. That's right, the legendary Steve Earle, who signed them to a record contract. And as you'll hear, Steve Earle was a sage teacher, but also a grating presence. In fact, one of the songs we discussed from Bright Spot references back to these formative years. After the V-Roys ended in late 1999, Mick joined another ahead-of-its-time act, Superdrag, before settling in with the Knoxville-based High Score in the late 2000s. Other members of the High Score include guitarist Robbie Trosper and guitarist Kevin Abernathy, bassist Vance Hilliard, and drummer Don Coffey Jr. Mick and the band have recorded at least 8 albums and a whole bunch of singles. As this interview makes clear, Mick was born to be a songwriter and play in bands. It's all he knows. It's all he wants to know. On this episode of 4 Songs, Mick and I discuss 4 songs from Bright Spot: Let the Motor Run, Used to Be Somebody, Concrete and Stone, and Long Way to Go. Mick will tell you there's no rhyme or reason for how the songs come, but thankfully he's kept at it. He's even got some new material, but he's hoping to do a big push this winter for Bright Spot, an album full of hard rockers, cowpunk, and so much more. So my name is Rob Thormeyer, and it is my pleasure to welcome Mick Harrison to 4 Songs. All right, well, Mick, thank you so much for joining me tonight on 4 Songs and talking to me about your music. I greatly appreciate you being here.
Man, thank you for having me. Like I've been telling a lot of people, it's like, especially right now, this time of not being able to play or go anywhere, basically. I love this. This is great. This is our touring right now. So thanks, Rob.
Oh, I appreciate it. And that's, the first question I've been asking everyone. I started this back in May when it wasn't clear how long we'd be cooped up in our homes. And what's this been like for you?
Well, as far as musically, I mean, like everybody else, it's been weird. Me and my guys were best friends. My band, we did put a record out in November of 2020, which is amazing. But we were almost done with it anyway. But November 6th, when we put that record out, I haven't seen some of those guys since. So it's been weird.
Wow.
I mean, not that they left the country or anything. We're all good. It's just, it's been pretty bad in Tennessee. So we've been trying to stay away from each other.
Yeah, because I hadn't really thought of that because, so many bands, either they live near each other or, they either live with each other, and hadn't thought about what it's like to have an album recorded and then not even really be able to see each other.
Yeah, we did a lot of the mixing and a few of the vocals and stuff when we weren't all there. And, that went pretty good. I wouldn't advise that's a good way to mix a record, but it worked. But, 2 out of the 5 guys in my band has had COVID. We are still trying to stay safe.
Yeah. So as you were putting the finishing touches on this and knowing what was going on and the inability to tour, were you just kind of like, well, this sucks? Or was it just, what are we going to do? We got to put it out and move forward.
Well, it was kind of the latter. It's like, we're pretty close to this. We don't really tour as much as we used to anyway. And I think the album had a really good name, Bright Spot. And I was hoping it would land. It landed, 3 days after the election. I was rolling the dice. I was hoping Bright Spot would be a good thing to come out, and it was. It actually worked out really good. And, that's what I said. I definitely didn't want to set on it till 2021. And we got to move on. We got more songs to write, more songs to play.
Yeah, we'll get to that toward the end about what you've been working on now. But again, going back to the beginning of this podcast is about songs and songwriting. So just always curious with people who've been doing this for a long time, when did you first get hit by the songwriting buzz?
Ooh, I would say I was probably around 13 or 14 because my dad was a really good guitar player. And he taught me just enough on guitar. And I thought he was like being a really good dad. And like, I want you to learn something, son. Go out and be artistic. But no, he really just wanted me to be his rhythm guitar player so he could play Chuck Berry songs. But at some point there, when I learned at least 3 to 4 chords, I was like, you know what? Can't sing very good. I don't like most of these songs I'm hearing. I'll just start trying to write. So I would say I probably wrote my first song, I don't know, 15 or 16 years old.
Wow. And so you got a chance to work with Steve Earle too. So what did he impart to you just as a songwriter? What lessons did he provide to you that you still utilize today?
Man, there's so many lessons from him. And, for a while, I was not his big. Okay, let me take that back. Early, before I met him, I was one of his biggest fans. Then I met him. Then I wasn't one of his biggest fans. But the more I look back on it, it's like, man, he really did us all a service. Matter of fact, every time I write a song, I think about some of the lessons he taught us. One was like, write something every day. At the time, I thought, well, that meant, sit down with pen and paper and write something every day. But I at least think about songs every day, or, driving down the road, you see something going on. That's a good story. Or here's some old dude at the hardware store say something really crazy. And it's like, ooh, that's a great song title. So I'm always kind of keeping a book open. And, and a few little, doing the 1, 2, 3, 4 line thing. That'd be like, all right, say you start off with a chorus and you have an idea for the second verse. So you do the second verse, but you go ahead and number them 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's kind of just a way to keep things in order. I use that all the time. And I'll move those numbers around, but he was really a good teacher.
Yeah, we'll get into some of that in some of the songs. That was one thing I was curious about. And there's one line in particular I'll ask you about when we get to it in one of the songs we were talking about. But who else besides Steve Earle? I mean, you obviously you're playing with your dad and Chuck Berry songs. Were there other major influences that you continue to listen to and try to emulate?
Well, not really. I mean, I did learn a lot with Steve Earle, and honestly, I learned a lot with Scott. Because I was like, when I came up here, I think it was raw. I think I kind of had a little bit of an idea of what to do. But working with Scott, I'd never worked with anybody before. And I think working with some people kind of helped me learn what to watch out for, I guess, basically. So now it's like, I don't really have people that are like, oh my God, he's the best songwriter in the world. I look at more of like lines. I mean, like I'm a big fan of like Paul Kelly right now, an Australian guy.
Okay.
And I couldn't tell you one of his records, but I can tell you a bunch of his songs. And he has so many great lines, and I'm not stealing them. He's a really good influence. I just heard a Tommy Womack record that hadn't been released yet. Some of Tommy's lines are amazing. It's so, I can't really go like, man. And I love, like Hank Williams Jr. Junior. Did I say junior? I didn't. I meant senior. There's a couple Hank Jr. songs I don't hate. I mean, artists are artists. It's just what I'm looking for is lines and stories.
Does it get easier the longer you do it?
Maybe not easier, but I learn more every day. And once I quit learning, then, well, I probably ought to quit. Because that's, to me, it's like not a job, but it's something I got to do. I mean, maybe this is pretentious, but some people have to paint. Like I want to paint a landscape. I have to do it. This is what makes me feel good. I have to sit down and make words go with, musical melodies.
Yeah, I like that analogy because I've had friends who would talk about, the great ones, not not just songwriters, but even athletes like Michael Jordan and people who just say, you know what, if he was a journalist, he would be the best journalist because that's just how he is. So there is, I think, a drive in certain people, and you have it obviously. So let's talk about Bright Spot. We'll be talking about 4 songs from the album: Let the Motor Run, Used to Be Somebody, Concrete and Stone, and Long Way to Go. So first of all, this came out in early November, and you were talking about you probably wrote most of these songs though before that. And as a fan, you think the album comes out and you think, oh, it just came out yesterday. The songs are brand new, then they must have just finished it up. But that's not how it works. So how long has you been working on this, and how did it all? You mentioned the pandemic earlier affected how you finished it, but just if you don't mind going back to the songs coming out, and you also talk about this being do it yourself, so if you can just talk about that as well.
No, you're right. I mean, those songs, they didn't just boom, here it is, it's on the record. I would say beginning of this record, not recording wise, but at least some of the writing stuff was 2 years before we actually put it out. I'd say one of the oldest songs on there is probably, well, actually, yeah, there's one that's really old, but the rest of them are within that 2 year span before we started recording. And we did do it ourselves. I'd say about 3 records ago, we thought it might be wise to go ahead and, buy some recording gear just in case something like this happened. I mean, pandemic wasn't on the table, but right. Just like something like this happened, we'd have our own stuff and we could do it quality, but still on the cheap. So I'm really glad we did that.
It's funny because this came out in November, but to me that feels like yesterday because the time is just.
You know what's funny? It feels like yesterday, but then on the other hand, it also feels like 2 years ago to me.
Right. Yeah. So it's got to be also kind of weird with that mentality, thinking, okay, this album came out, and now time is just this weird amorphous thing, which just keeps. I don't know. I mean, how do you, the time just being, I'm getting a little too philosophical.
No,
here, but yeah.
No, you're not. No, you're not. Because that is so weird. I would say since last April, I think I wrote a song last April. I haven't written anything from April up until last week. And the reason being is like my headspace. There's so much crap going on that every time I think, oh, okay, I want to write just a simple song to make somebody feel good or bad, so many crazy things would just enter that space and knock the songwriting part out. So, and even some of the song titles I was looking at earlier, it's like that I came up with during the pandemic. It's like, if I'd have wrote them right now, they wouldn't be relevant. We just went through a weird time, obviously, for everybody, but for songwriting, yeah, it was pretty weird. It's pretty weird. I think I'm coming out of it now, and I hope everybody else is too. But even the things I tried during the pandemic, man, they would have sucked. I'd have never put them out. It was bad.
Well, so let's start with the first song, Let the Motor Run. I mean, this is a fantastic opener. I mean, it just starts out, it grabs you, shakes you up, and gets you ready for the rest of the album. And before we get into the song itself, is when you write a song like this, do you just automatically think this is the opener?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I was working on the sequence of this record until like the day before we mastered it.
Yeah, because you always hear, some people plot out these albums and they think, okay, this is the opener because it just has that, I don't know, entree feel or something. Because to me, this song really does have that. This is the album, and this is the way to kickstart it. So I was just wondering, like, do people go do that consciously, or is it just sort of like, no, this makes sense? And
no, you're right though. I mean, trying to find a song that kind of like, I wouldn't say it gives you a little overall feel of the record, not just like, I don't want to start with a punk song or just a sad crying acoustic song. Something that gives you an overall feel. So good. I think I did okay on that then.
Don't hesitate. You've done all that you could cope with. It's not too late for you to take off. Here you go now. Let the motor run. Everything's just begun. Let the motor run so you can get away.
And so lyrically, I mean, this seems to be covering it could be about a number of situations, either like a kid leaving home or older family kind of moving on with their lives. So
Out of all the songs, this is the easiest one because I wrote this for my mom. Starting back, well, now the years, I don't even know the years, but my grandmother died. Well, and it was not an easy one either, hospice and all that. But my mom was the caretaker. She was the caretaker for that. And then like back to back, my aunt and my dad after that.
Wow.
And she just was a trooper, just like taking care of, God, I wouldn't want to do what she had to do. I wrote this song for her. And once my dad died and she was sad, but it was also a relief. Like I've been working my ass off, taking care of these people dying that I love. And I just wanted to write her a song about, you know what? You've done your job. You need to get out there, go on a cruise, buy a minivan, do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
So here you go now. Let the motor run. Everything's just begun. Let the motor run so you can get away.
Yeah, I can relate to that. My dad had MS, and when he died, it was like you said, it was sad, but it was also like, okay, we can start living a life again, because she was young enough where she could put a life back together. She could do things for once and leave the house for more than.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like my dad, he was 7 years older than my mom, and he died. He was actually 69. It was a week away from his 70th birthday. So my mom, like, you're still young, man. You move on to the next thing, and I don't know, you get it.
Mm-hmm. And you say this one came to you quickly?
Not super quickly.
Okay.
But because the verses there's not a lot of verses, which I'm a fan of. If you can do it right and just get in and get out. I did need a little help. My buddy Doug Gillard, he plays with God of My Voices, Not Earth. I was having a little block on the verses, melody for the verses, and he helped me with that. But then once he helped me with that, mainly like that bridge there, that melody bridge. I wrote the lyrics, but he had the melody on it. Once I got that, I rolled. I was done.
You got grace, you got patience, you got everything you need. Oh, you pass it on to me. Let the motor run. Everything's just begun. Let the motor run so you can get away.
I always run the stuff by the other guys. I bring in the bones, and they put the meat on it.
Okay. Yeah, they do. You guys do a great job. So, next song I wanted to talk about was "Used to Be Somebody," and this one is a bit more reflective. And I think so many people can relate to this idea. Or someone who seems to have the world at their hands, and it maybe doesn't work out that way. So, as a writer, was there anyone in particular that influenced this song, or just an experience maybe you had growing up or something like
Yeah, me.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, that is totally about me. And I've never done that before. But I thought,
Really?
this seems like, I don't know where it came from. It definitely came over time. But maybe I came up with a line or two, and I was like, man, this is a good idea. And then I finally figured out, it was like, dude, just write about you. Because you always need to write what you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I should know me pretty good. So there you go.
Firstborn, heaven sent, was a future class president. Strong forward on the second-rate team. I think they broke the mold. Had true love or an image of it. A fast car and a faster wit. He could have taken any path or road. Sometimes you just.
Well, I like the line, "You had true love or an image of it, a fast car and a faster wit." I mean, so you're talking earlier about sometimes you get a line and you kind of write around it. And I was kind of curious if this was a line like that, where you just have it like, okay, that's an awesome line. Do you build around that?
No, that one actually came. So let's see, what was the line I built around? Oh, I built around the whole first two lines. I built around. I really liked it. The future class president is what I built. And that sent me back to like high school stuff.
Right.
And then it was like, oh, my girlfriend in high school. That's that whole had true love or an image. The deal in high school, man.
Yeah.
You thought she's the one. Boy, was I wrong.
Yeah. What about the local TV airtime?
That one, I kind of bastardized that one a little bit.
Got a little airtime on local TV. He could have sat on the county seat. He could have done damn anything, but that's the way it goes. Had $1 million smile, late nights and a lot of miles. He thought he'd never get old. A story often told. He used to be somebody. He used to be somebody. He used to be somebody.
Because I do a lot of local TV here in Knoxville. I'll go and promote a record or whatever they want me to do. I'll go and do it. But I also kind of thought if I'd have stayed in West Tennessee, that would have probably been my jam. I'd been like, yeah, I could have been, I don't know, in the courthouse doing something. I probably could have. I know how to like, I guess, be popular.
Well, it's funny that you say you don't write about yourself that much. So I find that interesting because I think if I write a song, I would probably write about myself too. So I'm wondering, like, what is it, if this is a step out for you to write about yourself, was it difficult to do that?
Now, when I say that, I mean, yeah, I do write about myself, but I usually write, looking out other than this one looking in, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Since I don't feel like I've done this before, it was actually easy because it was like, I didn't feel like I was, all right, I'm doing something I've never done before. So it made the lines come a little bit quicker. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what I like is toward the end, the way the guitar just picks up and it's almost like a kind of like 70s classic rock feel to the solo on this one. Exactly.
At the outro, that has definitely got to be Robbie Trosper, man. Yeah. That's why me and him's been a good team for so many years because I think he knew where this needed to go.
Yeah, because it just really stands out to me. And then the way with the background singers at the end, where did that idea come from?
Well, that one I went through so many things on that because it's a short song.
Mm-hmm.
And I really liked it that way. Just get in, say your message, get out. And then I really wanted to do like in the beginning, I actually my next door neighbor plays for the Knoxville Symphony Orchestra. So I had access to like string section. But some of his buddies, they had to charge, which is fine. It wasn't that expensive. And the only problem was I didn't really know what I wanted. Then I had a horn section in my head. It basically came down to, I definitely wanted backup singers on it. Kevin Abernathy's daughters have a band called the Pinklets. And they are awesome singers. And I told them I wanted soul singers on the outro. And man, they nailed it like 2 times through.
Yeah.
And these girls are like, 20 years old, anywhere down to 16 years old, very white girls. And they sung what I wanted. They did great.
Okay, cool. So we'll move on to Concrete and Stone. And I feel like we're kind of moving a decade up here because where the last song has that 70s feel, this one has that kind of 80s Replacements, early Soul Asylum kind of cowpunk feel to it. Just the way
sweet. I like that. I haven't heard that. I like that so far.
But just love that hook. I mean, do you get that hook when you're writing a song that you just sort of start with the hook, or does that come to you as you're just kind of playing on the guitar, or just the intro to that song?
Well, thinking back on that one, I think that hook was an after product. I want to say Kevin kind of came up with the hook. I mean, I think I was playing just open chords, but the almost the AC/DC kind of vibe or whatever.
Oh yeah.
I think Kevin came up with that. I mean, it was in the structure of the song, but those punches, I think that was his deal. Yeah, that was, I think really what started this song off was the vocals. I mean, the lyrics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so is that how sometimes it works for you? Is it the words come first and then you search for the melody, or does it ever come all at once?
Man, it is so different on everything. It really is. Like Concrete and Stone, I think the first thing, and I just spouted out of my mouth one day, it was like, Voltech, no college, got a pretty good trade.
Voltech, no college, got a pretty good trade. Got a paid-for truck and an average wage. Met a girl, my lord, his mom would say. Work through the week and pay hell on
There's no formula. You don't go in like, all right, I'm going to build this bridge, and we're going to start with a foundation. Yeah.
Well, so lyrically, you said you started with that first line. So what led you to take it in that direction? Was there just something you experienced yourself, or was it something that just came to you? Or?
Well, I started thinking about it, and I started thinking about high school again. Good grief. I can't believe this record's about high school. Actually, no, back in high school, you could either get your credit. I mean, like every high school, I guess, or you could go to Votech and learn how to weld or lay bricks or whatever. I have a cousin named Charlie Crockett. That's what he did. He went and learned how to lay bricks. And so I kind of went through his life on this because, he ended up getting a divorce and kind of being his own man.
She said, honey, I love you, but you gotta get saved. She said, honey, I love you, but change your ways. Got a busy job that'll last all year. Takes a long way home, has a couple cold beers.
Yeah, because the phrase concrete and stone, I mean, that can be an allegory for a lot of different things. And I think you kind of use that a couple of times talking about his job, the masonry, but then also like an imagery of the road too. Is that, how did that phrase come to you? Because it's just, 2 words or 3 words with the end, but just succinctly.
I don't really know, but every time I try to write something, I try to make it at least make 2 to 3 to 4 meanings. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So I like how when you end it, there's a bridge there that, at least it feels like a bridge to me. Maybe it's not, but it goes into a different key before you go back into the chorus. But there's not like that. There's not a verse after that. It's just you go to the chorus. So how did when you're working on a song like that? Does that what goes through the band's playing when you're like, hey, let's do this a little bit differently?
And you just said it. I mean, it's like I kind of go with the old Johnny Paycheck style of writing a song. Let's do everything we need to do. Well, main point in the chorus, but everything we need to do to explain what's going on in this chorus in 2 verses. And then after that, you can move it around, put a little bit of twist somewhere if you want to. Everybody's already got the story in their head. This one here, man, I just honestly, I didn't feel like there was an end to this story.
Concrete and stone. Concrete
know, there's the deal with every song I try to do. I try to make it work for anybody that listens to it. You know what I mean? I didn't want to like let somebody know that my cousin Charlie Crockett got a divorce while he was, laying bricks.
So how? I'm just curious, because I was always writing about, when I was a journalist, writing about something that happened and had an ending. How do you pull that back? I mean, how do you tell yourself, look, let's not go that far? I mean, is there like an internal editor in your mind saying, no, I want to just leave it here? I mean, because I kind of have the opposite problem. I think I try to get to the ending, and I can hear that sometimes it's not appropriate.
Well, okay. I mean, there's a couple of songs I'm actually working on right now that need an ending because they're death songs. So there is an ending. I like to kind of keep it open, like, all right, like even Concrete and Stone. I mean, this is a story about a dude, but maybe could just be chapter 2. They could have a chapter 3,
Yeah. Cool. I want to thank you so much for your time tonight, Mick. We got one more song, long way to go. And it seems like this is a good place for us to wrap things up, because it feels pretty reflective to me and just about kind of getting through life. I mean, I don't know how much this was affected, or if at all, by the pandemic. Just from your perspective, I mean, what was the song what were you trying to say with this one?
This one here is actually, out of all the other ones, this one actually is old. When I was working on songs 2-3 years ago, just kind of round stuff up, I found this one. This is an old V-Roy song.
Oh, wow.
This would have been, if we'd have had a third record, this would have been on the third record. Of course, a lot of the meanings, and there's only a few words that probably are the same, but a lot of it's changed. I mean, I do remember like the first verses were, when I remember writing them, I was mainly talking about like, I was kind of singing to Steve Earle, like, hey man, we still got a long way to go. What was the first line? Can't find the words to write you a song, which was a big problem at one point. A song had a good tune, then it went wrong. Tried and I tried, then tried again. Played it real slow, played for a friend. So the first verses are definitely a V-Roy's verse from the V-Roys. Second verses, that's more about my wife and just life.
Yeah.
And the bridge is totally new, though. The bridge, I'm calling it the outro bridge. I don't even know if that's a thing. That was more recent. That was probably about 2 years ago.
Yeah, 'cause I like it when songwriters use a song as a metaphor, and use it. You kick it off with that and maybe you're talking about can't find the words to write you a song. Was that it because of what you were going through at the time with the V-Roys, or was that using it for just some metaphor for something else?
No, that was actually just straight up, because I remember the second record, Steve came up to Knoxville, and we had toured so much on the first record that we really didn't have a lot of time to like sit around and come up with hey man, the next record's gonna be even better, because I'm sure you've heard it from Scott, and I think Elvis Costello said it first. It's like you've got your whole life to write your first record, and you got like 6 months to write your second one. We only had like 6 weeks. So all the songs we brought to him, he's, no, Hoss, man, that ain't it. So I basically can't find the words to write you a song, Steve. I'm trying. And but it doesn't matter. I still got a long way to go. This is not, if you say these songs ain't good, I'm still going. Mm-hmm. And then that's where it came from. But basically, like I say, it's a metaphor for life, man. Hopefully, I still got a long way to go.
across something that you started writing 20 years ago and then finish it now, I mean, what was that like emotionally, I'm wondering?
Dude, it was awesome. It was awesome because, and I found like at least two more songs, which I'm probably going to finish. No, it was really good because just like I say, the first lines just like, I remember that. I mean, if I wrote it 50 years ago when I was a baby, I would remember those lines and why I wrote them. So at the time, there's a reason I probably didn't finish it then. Now the story's older. It just really filled in a lot easier because I had more experience to fill this particular song with. But yeah, the music was there. The music was the same thing. Now that was fun because, I mean, finding the music and the melody is just as hard, if not more, than finding the lyrics. And so finding that music was like really exciting.
Yeah. So how hard is it I mean, this is going to sound like a stupid question because I know it's hard, but I mean, when you have that melody, I mean, especially something that was written so long ago, so did you record it so you kind of had it so you didn't, because my thing is I forget stuff. Like I'll try to come up with something and I'll get stuck in this loop and then I'll just be like, I'll pick up tomorrow and then I'll just forget what I wrote. And obviously you didn't do that here. So how did you kind of preserve that memory?
Oh my God. I mean, yeah, I have to write a list like tomorrow. I think list, get up, take a shower, I got to remember stuff like that. And it's got to be on a list. No, this, like all the stuff I've ever done, whether it be back in the late 80s, early 90s, whatever, it was on cassette back then. So that's how I found it. I dug this cassette out and was like, what is this? Didn't have any lyrics, written down, but, there's the words. I just, one night, sat down and probably the Highland House here in Knoxville while we're in the V-Roys and like, hey, man, here's an idea. Recorded it and then forgot about it. And so it's like, pretty exciting to find something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, I know for me, when I come across a song I haven't listened to in a long time, that meant a lot to me. Sometimes, it takes me right back to that spot. Like when I was 16, that song still just can take me right back. Did that happen here to you?
That one actually, yeah. I knew exactly where I was sitting when I wrote it. And I've done that on some other stuff too, even older stuff, like, dig it. And mainly because I have hundreds of cassettes with just, a guitar going and me going, or whatever. But every time I hear something that was pretty good, and I probably knew it at the time, it takes me right back. It's kind of a pandemic fun deal to do if you got time to bring out all your cassettes and back in time to like, the early 90s. And you'll find some songs that you wrote that are pretty good.
Yeah, cool. Well, I want to thank you again, Mick, for your time tonight. And as we wrap up, when do you see things getting better? I mean, I kind of see like where you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, but the tunnel just keeps getting longer and longer.
I know, man. Well, everybody watches the news. So, I mean, you can go with them, but here's what I'm going with. Me and Tommy Womack are playing a show in late April, a house concert, outdoor house concert. And unless things just go crazy, that's what I'm shooting for, is being like, okay, I can at least start getting back out in the world a little bit. That's what I'm shooting for. And
so what's the best way for your fans and others to support you and your music right now?
Absolutely, mickharrison.com. And we really utilize Bandcamp. Bandcamp is a fan of actual, bands that don't have any support. They're really good. I really like Bandcamp. Cool. Well, thank you again so much for your time tonight. This has been a lot of fun. Rob, thank you so much for letting me do this. Let's do it again. What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, so as you can tell, Nick and I had a good time with this one. I want to thank him for talking with me, talking about his music, I encourage you to check out his website at mickharrison.com. Go get a copy of Bright Spot. I hope you enjoyed this one. I had a great time doing it. Get ready. I got a lot more coming, including some really cool events coming up. Hopefully, maybe. Stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe, and I will be in touch.